the Love Your Life show. I am so thrilled you are here, like I am every week, and especially this week. I have Melissa Peduzzi on the show. She's a certified mindset and life coach at Mom Life by Design. Her mission is helping moms to stop feeling victimy or being victims to the frustrations of life and instead take control to create the motherhood experience they dream of. We talk about all the things in this episode: overwhelm, frustration, mom guilt, the busy badge of honor, what I call expectation hangovers, brain drama, all of it and more. Okay. No matter the age of your kids, you will get something out of this episode, and stay till the end because Melissa has an awesome offer for us listeners of the Love Your Life show. Also, if you like the questions that we ask in the interview that you hear, make sure you head to the show notes on my website. That's where I put the links that she speaks about, but that's also where in all episodes, not just interviews, I put the reflection questions in there. So my warriors who like homework and reflecting on the things that we're talking about, they're in there. So go get them. And thank you for joining me today. Let's welcome Melissa. Hello and welcome to the show, Melissa. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Susie. It's so great to be here.
When I heard about your body of work, my brain was like, oh my goodness, tell me more. Like, because you say your superpower is helping women stop being victims to the frustrations of life and instead take control. And I was just like, yes, yes, please. This is what we need on the Love Your Life show. So could you give us a brief, overview as to how you got into doing this work?
Yes, I was one of those women. That's how I got into this work.
Amazing how
Uh,
that happens.
yes, but it was all through like the experience of motherhood. And so I had these amazing expectations of what being a mom was going to be like. And I always knew I had two things. I always knew I wanted to adopt and I wanted to homeschool. And so I had these visions of all of us sitting peacefully around the kitchen table, doing
Yeah.
craft projects and making cookies. And then we brought home our 2.5-year-old son, and my expectations crashed smack into reality. There were no
Oh,
peaceful, loving, craft projects happening around the table. We were more like hurtling macaroni across the room, and, you know, it just kept building and building
peeling
my
it off the wall,
expectations.
right? Yeah.
Yes, oh gosh, yes, all of the things. And then we brought his brother home a year later, and it was even more of just this, "What in the world are we doing here, and why is it not what I thought it would be?" Now, don't
Mm.
get me wrong, I loved them fiercely, and there was nothing I wouldn't do for them, but there was just, like, this low level of frustration that
Mm,
was under the surface in everything that I did. I didn't wanna feel that way. I
mm,
knew that there was something more. I knew I used to have joy and I felt like I had lost it completely.
mm,
And so I just remember asking my friends, like, I just need some help. I don't know where my joy went, but I want to find it again.
mm,
And through some conversations with some wiser women who had been there before, they helped me kind of walk through that season. I learned some tools to kind of get
mm,
out of that overwhelm and frustration and move forward and be present in
mm,
my life. And instead of looking for the joy, creating the joy from within me. And it was so
mm,
freeing. And I knew at that point, that's where Mom Life by Design was born. Every mom should be able to design the life she wants. And
mm.
no mom should have to be stuck in that overwhelm and frustration like I was. There is a way through. And so that's my heart, is helping women one on one move out of that I was experiencing or what they're experiencing that is so
Mm.
painful for them right now, into what it is that they dream of, which still doesn't look like peaceful days around the table
No.
making crafts, but there's so much more joy in all of the things when you stop being a victim and
Mm.
take control of what you can create in your own life.
Yeah, so I love this, like this feeling of overwhelm and frustration, and then what it looks like it led you to look externally for other women and seek guidance there, which is always lovely. Was there a period when you sort of went inward and like a shame spiral, like thinking something's wrong with you, like I should be enjoying this, or even because obviously like to look outside of yourself, you got to a point where you thought like I want this to be different. Whereas I think it took me longer to look outside of myself because I was more like, well, I guess this is what it's like, and I got to just suck it up, and something must be wrong with me. Is there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think all of us have the shoulds that bury us, and that mom guilt is completely debilitating when you
Mm,
think, I should be doing a better job at this. I shouldn't have to struggle so much for this to
mhm,
happen. My
mhm,
kids shouldn't be acting this way. And
mm,
so, like, we have all of these shoulds that we heap on ourselves and all the shame and guilt that comes along with that, which I know you are an expert in
mhm,
that area. But just no one operates well out of guilt and
mhm,
shame. We can't move forward productively, and then it just pours out on those that we love around us, and it's
mhm.
just icky, and I knew I did not wanna be there anymore.
Yeah, well, I really, yeah, I appreciate you speaking to that. It's like when we have this disconnect with like our expectation and reality, what do we do? Do we internalize it as we're wrong, or do we then externalize it as blaming like they're wrong? I think I did both, like the inner shame and then the
Mm.
mom martyr, like, look at me. So I guess, yeah, like sort of thinking of this mom guilt. Could you speak a little more of that, like where that comes from? And then even what do we do when we, like, if someone right now is like, yes, Melissa, I want to sort of step out of this, what do I do?
Yeah, well, mom guilt simply comes from a story we're telling ourselves that isn't true.
Mm,
We
okay.
have so many of those stories that we build up in our brains, the "I'm not good enough. I wasn't made for this. My children are unruly. This will never work." All of these stories that we just hold on to in our brain, they create all of that guilt. Like we were talking about with the shoulds. The
Mm,
shoulds, we heap those on and the guilt just builds up. And so we have to rewrite the story. We
mm.
have to take an honest look at what it is that we're telling ourselves, what thoughts we're fueling that are then generating those emotions that we're feeling and leading us to be just so stuck
Well,
and
and
so
also, what are
overwhelmed.
we taking in? Because this whole, like the story
Mm.
we tell ourselves. For sure. When I was a young mother, we didn't have social media in the way that we had. I would look out and see moms at the playground and tell myself my own story that they were all like so peaceful and calm at home, cutting the sandwich crusts off, you know. But now we even have it, like we have a lot more input into our brains. And so to
Mm.
watch that influence of where we, and just even our brains thinking the thought that like, oh, this is what their real life looks like. Like, no, it is not.
I
They have
know.
on
And I
the
think we
internet.
can so distance ourselves from that idea too. Like we know in reality, we're just seeing snapshots on the
Mhm.
internet. And we know that cognitively.
Right.
But in our emotions, like you can't like separate yourself out from that. Almost it's like I see that one picture and my life doesn't feel like that picture is making me feel. And so
Yeah.
something must be wrong here. We were
Mm.
never made to be able to access everywhere in the world all at one time. But here we are.
We have it now.
We
So,
have it now, and it's such a battle to not end up in that place of comparison or expectations from what we see and what we're experiencing, and
mm,
instead be able to just build your own reality. Mind
yeah.
your own business.
Mind your own business. So what would you say to a mom who feels like she's losing that mom guilt battle? How would you help her out?
Oh my gosh. I want you to know first, mama, you are not alone. I think we feel like we make so many feelings about our feelings and about the thoughts and the things that we're experiencing. And then we just end up almost in, like, the fetal position, like, I'm not gonna be able to move forward anyway from this. I just want you to know you're not alone. You're
Mm,
not the only one who feels this way. If
mm,
we took a survey of all the moms across the world, I am positive that all of them would say, "I've struggled with this too."
mhm,
And so I just want you to know that you're not alone and that you are the perfect mom for your kids.
mm,
And when we can start to tell ourselves that story instead of, "I'm in the wrong place. This is the wrong time. I don't know what I'm doing."
mm. Or I'm
You
doing it
are
wrong. I'm not doing it good enough.
yes.
I'm not right. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we could go on for days because we've all told ourselves these stories
Mhm,
and we are very well versed in them. But when we can start to practice that different story that I'm the perfect mom for my kids.
mm,
One that I practice all the time that I'm really working on is I am for my kids, not against them.
mm,
And because I think we make this internal battle that we're trying to make their wills align with our wills, but they're their own people too. And we
mm,
don't get to force them to be in line with our wills. And
mm,
so when I can remind myself, I am for my children, not against them. And I
mm,
practice that every day as much as I can and remember that story, it starts to develop a new rut in my brain. And I don't keep falling into the old one, the
mm.
old mom guilt battle as much.
I
No.
really like that. The for versus against it brings up something I talk about with parenting and like fear versus faith parenting, that like,
Mm,
because when we're like, when we are parenting in a way where we're sort of against them, it comes out of like, we're thinking a thought, like they're doing something wrong and we need to
mhm.
shift them more into this model versus that great quote that I am not going to be able to come up with, but basically like that we are here to sort of lead our kids. Like our kids are given to us and we are this journey, this leader of letting them be more them.
Mm.
Speaks to your thought of I am for my kid. I'm here, like maybe I think they should be doing this other thing, but guess I'm not. And how do I sort of support them, be that wing beneath their wings?
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get to shit ourselves and we don't get to shit our children either.
Mhm.
So they're
Yeah.
their own little individual people.
Well, and even the thought like I'm the perfect mom for them, perfect to me, I still probably would argue against that in my brain,
Mm,
but I do like thinking like I'm their mom. Like no,
mm.
and no kid comes out of childhood unscathed. Like I talk to adults all the time. I just was having this fascinating conversation the other day with a woman. It was so funny. It was in the same day, two coaching sessions. One was a mom talking about her kid and going to swim lessons and how she was, he said he wanted to do swim lessons. So she's bringing him to swim lessons. And, he's sort of struggling about when it's time to go to the swim lesson, but she follows through and
Mm,
has him. Then later on in the day, I have and so the kid is complaining, and we were thinking, like, yeah, well, maybe, like, who knows? Maybe the kid in therapy in 10 years is like, yeah, my mom made me do swimming and she didn't listen to me. Like, who knows? Literally the same day, I'm talking to someone and she brings up an example. She said, my parents just never pushed me. They like they never had me do swim lessons. And it's something I've always been annoyed with them for, that they never push. And it's like, oh my God, just there is no perfect parent. Like kids come out with drama. So you like there, if we get all mired into like there's a right way of doing it, it's not helpful. It's more this like, I'm their mom. I'm doing the best I can. They're going to learn
mm.
the lessons they need to learn through me. And let's just like my job is to love and support them. It gets me out of that shame also, which is helpful.
Yes, I love that reminder. Be perfect isn't the best word in all circumstances. When we drive it to that level of actually perfect is something you strive towards.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
so,
perfect might
yeah.
work for some people. For me, I have such like trauma around that it's more like I'm the mom they've got. Is my like I say that to my sons all the time. They're like, my son recently was like, it's kind of hard to be around you because you like set a goal and you go after it. And I was like, yeah, I totally get how that's hard. And what are we gonna do about that? Because like I'm the mom you've got. Like maybe I don't it's that, and I know I am the exact mom he needs to become the man he's going to become. That's, but this, like, we all have light and dark in us. So
Mm,
for sure, I think what you're speaking to is like, you're not alone, getting out of the shame, because shame is that like that we're wrong or we're doing something wrong, and shame loves secrecy.
mhm,
So getting out of that is super helpful. And so also connecting with other people. Like
mm.
how did that connecting with other people, how did that help you, or how do you see that helping your clients?
Well, I think it's exactly the same thing that you're talking about. Shame lives and thrives in secrecy. And so when we can bring all of this out to light, like, here's where I'm struggling. And people are like, oh, you know what? I am too. And
Mm,
sometimes that requires us to be so stinking vulnerable and go first. And
mhm,
it's so hard.
mhm,
And if you feel all alone right now and you're like, I could never say this to my mom friends, I
mm,
could never talk about this with them, I would just encourage you to give it a try in a small way
mhm,
and just offer a little bit of vulnerability,
mhm,
because when you go first, all of these other moms who are struggling too can join with you in lifting each other up. And it is so, so helpful to have
mm,
someone outside of you to be able to look at your thoughts that you're saying out loud and go, wait a minute,
mhm.
there's not a bit of truth in what you're saying right now. That you're using that to beat yourself up. That's not true.
Mhm.
And to hear
Yeah.
that validated from someone outside of you is so powerful, but it does require that vulnerability and that going first sometimes, which is so, so, so hard.
So hard, yet it's so healing. So I've been on the other side of someone going vulnerable first, and
Mm,
I'm just thinking, I'm not sure if I gave them the validation. So if a listener is, but it landed really deep with me. I remember one mom saying to me when we were at school pickup, she's like, oh my God, I'm so irritated. I was just like in the middle of one of my shows and I had to come pick up my kid. And I was like, like, I don't even know what I did, but in my head, I was like, we can say this, like, we can not be this, like, oh, I'm so excited, I'm gonna get my kid, and so, yes, for listeners to start sharing, because even if the reception you get may not be a like, oh, me too, it's
Mm,
you're at least putting that out in their brain where it's like, they start considering that maybe this is okay, and we don't see the ripple effects of those things. Also, great opportunity to share with the coach. If you were feeling
mm,
just so super vulnerable and maybe you've had some female wounding, to bring it
mm.
to a safe container with someone like Melissa or me, or wherever we get our safe places met, to share it and to just start sort of letting some of that out, like your honesty and integrity, and you're always going to feel better. So yes.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, even just saying it out loud for yourself starts to shine a light
Yes.
on the shame that's there so it can start to dissipate too. Just saying it out loud, even if no one validates it,
Mm,
which we're both here to validate you. Like we
yeah.
have been there, we understand there is nothing wrong with you, nothing is
Mhm.
broken. Like we can move forward. When
That's
we
a
speak those
really
words out
good
loud.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like just that nurturing of your, it just, if it is that, like, oh my God, yeah, this is hard. It is hard to make a dinner after your kid was just snarly, or your teenager's been in his, you're worried about this, but that inner nurturing and that
Mm,
um caring for ourselves. Yeah, I
for
like that a lot.
sure.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Well, can you tell us a little about your mind, heart, and soul process? How that helps
Yes.
women? Yeah.
Yes, it is all connected. I mean, we've already touched on it a little bit, but in our mind is where everything starts. And we create a whole world in our mind of all of these stories that we're telling ourselves, good or bad, positive or negative, whatever we're telling ourselves, it lives here, it breathes here, and it starts to become true in what we see in our life. And that just trickles down into our heart, into our emotions. And I feel like a lot of us get really, really stuck here
Mm,
because our emotions are not something we were all taught were safe. We've not been allowed to feel all emotions in some circumstances, or we've internalized messages that I can't feel certain
mm,
ways. And so learning to accept that as a human, you're going to feel a wide array of emotions. They're all okay. There's
mm,
nothing wrong with you for what you're feeling. And then learning to listen to those feelings as little messengers in our body. What loving message do they have for you? And
mm,
letting them move through you. They don't hang out there forever. I
mm.
I used to resist anger and frustration like it was nobody's business because I
Yeah.
thought if I go there, I am always going to be angry, always going to be frustrated.
Mhm.
It takes about 90 seconds for it
Yeah.
to move through my body, and it just makes me laugh now at all the time I spent resisting and then exploding because I'm holding these emotions down.
Mhm.
And so that's a huge area is in your heart. And then your soul is just moving forward with exactly what you want to create in your life, aligning who you want to be with how you're showing up. And we
Mm,
do that by going back through our thoughts and feelings. And it just all is a big loop where
mm,
we see what we're creating. We
mm,
literally get to design the life that we want
mm.
as mamas.
Oh, it feels
What
so
great
calming.
news.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
it is, and it's that, like, oh, they're just little messengers, just like a tap, 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 and everything you're speaking to, this awareness of our thoughts, this awareness that feelings are just here, they're not good or bad. We've had training that there were bad, or that we shouldn't feel certain
Mhm.
emotions. It's definitely my experience, and then and also just allowing them, their little guideposts, they're telling us something, like frustration isn't bad, and we can feel frustration, and then what is it here to teach me? I really
Yes.
appreciate that. So if we're in this state, like an emotional state, or and feeling more reactive, like we notice maybe frustrations in our body, and we don't have the time to, like, we always have time to breathe, but like, if we're feeling reactive, how can we move more to proactive, or sort of showing up in our life the way we want to show up?
Yeah, and it takes a lot of intention. I don't think a lot of times it's in that moment that we're able to just like shift the button. We can't shift a gear from reactive to proactive a lot of times,
Right.
especially when we're yeah, we're under a lot of pressure. We don't have the time to sit down and feel our feelings at that moment. So we plan ahead of time. We start the day with an intention. How do
Mm,
I want to show up today? Are you
mm,
going to get it perfect? Absolutely not, because we're humans walking this earth. We do not get things perfect, and that's okay. But we
Mm,
keep coming back to what we intentionally want to create. We
mm,
put it forefront in our minds. We practice it. We generate those feelings that we want to feel, and we
mm,
keep working at it outside of those really reactive moments.
mm,
And the great news is, especially with our kiddos, we get opportunities to show them what it means to come back and say, hey, you know what? I did that wrong.
mm,
I didn't show up the way I wanted to there, but I'm going to show up the way I want to now. And I'm going to say that I'm sorry for the way that I responded here. It came out this way because I was frustrated, but that's not an excuse. It
mm,
just is. And I want to apologize to you. I'm going to repair. And then what a model for them to live and learn by as
mm,
they're growing, as they're feeling these big emotions,
mm,
for them to be like, oh, I'm not going to get it right all of the time. So there's no shame in that,
mm,
but I can come back and repair. And so I
mm,
just think it's beautiful as moms learn to walk this out, what the example they're setting for their kids, what a new generation of kids are going to be raised up to walk in integrity for who they want to be and how they want to show up to the world. I just love it.
mm. I love it too. And I love it. And I want to highlight the importance of setting an intention for the day. Like I love that idea because, or not even the importance of it, but just how it actually works. Like in stopping ahead of time and setting an intention for our day and sort of you're directing your brain in a certain way,
Mhm.
bringing your focus to maybe something that's in alignment with your values. So maybe you want to be, if you a calm and connected mom, or you want to be present where your feet are with your husband that day, or you want to be really efficient in your work day, or like any sort of advanced planning with our brain. That's what our homo sapien skill set of our amazing brain does. And then just that freedom without the shame to bring ourselves back to that during the day. I know when I first got started with this sort of intention setting, I would set like 3 alarms during the day that would remind me, like,
Mhm.
hey, 11, Susie, like, remember you were going to be productive today. And here you are, like, scrolling Instagram and eating walnuts or, whatever. It's like, oh, right.
Mhm.
Like, and that, like, laughing at ourselves, or, oh, remember you were going to be connected with your kids and you're cleaning out underneath the sink and while they're playing puzzles. Like, what would feel good to you at the end of the day? Just sort of removing the shame and looking more at ourselves with curiosity. So yes, please, listeners, practice that, which is great. I love it.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, can you tell me a little more about like dissecting, you speak about overwhelm and frustration, and how maybe like why we sometimes as women, like the impacts of motherhood, why we sometimes are in overwhelm and frustration, like how does that even occur? And then maybe even how do we stop a day from unraveling if we had an intention, but then we're like, oh, I'm in the middle of it. What can we do?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I mean, it is no wonder
Question.
that moms are overwhelmed. Yeah, there's a lot of questions here. So if I forget one, bring me back because I will talk about any of them for days. But I think, like, as moms, we all know you wear 80,000 hats. We are the chef, the chauffeur, the homework checker, the dishwasher, the whatever it is. We've got all of these hats that we're wearing. So there's all of these different facets of life that we're involved in and working towards. So our brain is already divided. Add to that the impact of being a mom. Like, we are just trying to raise children. Sometimes we're just trying to keep them alive, which can be
Yeah.
a really difficult thing depending on the day,
Understandably, yeah, right.
just to keep them alive. But then we have this greater mission of wanting them to be happy, healthy, productive members of society. And just the impact of that weighs on us. Like, oh my goodness, they are looking like crazy people today. How is this going to shape out? And we can like see visions of the future that are like the worst versions of anything we could ever imagine.
Mhm.
And then, like we talked about before, we have access to the entire world in our pockets. And so, like, we're able to see everyone's highlights versus our very low light of a day at that point. And
Yeah.
we just compare, and it is insanity. And
Mhm.
I read a statistic that blew me away that moms, no matter whether they stay at home or work outside the home, all of their work combined is 106 hours a week.
Wow.
That's how much moms are working. So
Wow.
tell me that you shouldn't be overwhelmed when you're trying to work
Yeah.
106 hours a week. Like, that's
My
a
God. I'm
lot.
like, that's pushing however many hours there are in a week. Like that is that is
Right.
2 full-time jobs, almost 3. Wow.
Right. Who's got time to sleep? Like, who's got time to
Yeah.
take care of themselves at that point? And
Mhm.
so I think we've become people who wear busyness like a badge of honor,
Mhm.
and our to-do list takes priority over presence. Because when we can show our worth through the things that we're doing, it's a whole lot easier to validate than looking inward and validating ourselves for showing up the way that we want to.
Well,
And
also
so,
even this, like, what we're doing, but even what you said, like culturally, we have this expectation that we are responsible, and you sort of said it quickly, but like happy, healthy, functioning kids, like us putting that responsibility for that on our shoulders. I mean, for sure, we influence it, and yet, like, I'm responsible fully for another human being. No, like that's a lot. A lot of pressure. And I've raised my kids. I definitely, like, we have a parental responsibility. And I know that there can be this whole other extreme of detached or lazy parenting. That's not what I'm talking about. But this over responsibility for another human's life
Mhm.
satisfaction. God, talk about a burden.
Yes.
And
And
then
so,
we're
yes,
judging ourselves on that. I see that all the time. This, like, oh, I got my kid into this college, or my kid did this, or my kid had a nervous breakdown. Like, what are we making that mean about us? It's just way too much for anyone's brain to hold on to or take responsibility for.
yes, I see that all the time too. It's the assigning value to how our kids are doing in life to
Mhm.
us. And
Yeah.
so if they're doing okay, I'm doing okay. And if
Yeah.
they're not, I'm not either.
Hmm.
But we're two separate entities. We
Hmm.
have a parental responsibility 100%, but we cannot make our children do anything.
Hmm.
Try.
Hmm. Right.
Try and see what happens. So,
So how do you get back to that more internal measure than, thinking that if this, then that, like, if my kid gets into college he wants, then I'm successful, or if my, um, any of those ifs, you know what I'm talking about.
yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And this is something I will be honest, I struggle with it a lot too, but I call it dropping the rope.
Mm,
And so like we're holding the rope, trying to like drag them along, pull them with us, make it what we think it should be. And you just have to let go of the rope.
I like that.
Now, I keep running back to the rope and I'm like, but wait, I
Yeah.
can do this so much better. Let me drag this rope along. And then I'm exhausted and frustrated and I am against them because they're not following my way
Mm,
of dragging down this rope when I
mm.
can drop the rope and let them be so much better. But it
Well,
is
and
so
that
hard.
yeah, and that gets back to your, like, your parenting for your kids, not against them, because I love the rope analogy, because I think what often happens, you're like trying to pull them along, but what they're going to do is pull back. Certainly, if
Mhm.
if they are in, like, healthy, functioning brains and safe houses, that's their stage of development from 10 to 22, is to differentiate, to individuate, to push again. So, like, you're pulling, they're pulling. It's like, just drop the freaking rope.
Yes. Why do we make
Yeah,
it a tug of war? Yes.
right. Like, just stop. It takes, yeah, I really appreciate that. And then turning into other, experts who are just like, no, this is fine. You don't need to micromanage everything. You don't need to be that helicopter parent. You don't need to do it all, which also speaks to other women who don't have kids. It's this feeling of doing it all. Um, I mean, studies show that whether you have kids or not, you are doing more of the load, the mental and the, emotional load in houses and running houses than usual. Sort of this pendulum has swung where we now are like, we can do it all, and doing it all is leaving us totally frazzled.
For
So
sure.
just because we can
Yes.
do it all, let's give some of that back, right?
And this idea of multitasking, it's
Mm,
a lie that we have been sold. That you can do it all if you do it all at one time together. Like batch it all together and do all of the things. Our brain is meant to do one thing at a time.
mm, yeah.
And when we can get to a point where we can slow down, I have to remind myself every day, multiple times a day, one thing at a time, Melissa,
Mm.
one thing at a time, because I'll jump from one thing to the other,
Oh my God,
trying to
me
get
too. My
more
brain is like,
done.
no, you can do four things at once. I'm like, no, I can't. Not
Yes, you
well.
cannot. You
I'm doing it
can.
right.
Yes, you
Doing
can.
them
It
all
doesn't look
half. That's
pretty.
that's how I end up with macaroni in my hair. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yes. And then you're exhausted at the end of the day and
Mm,
have nothing left to give anyone because your brain's ping-ponged around all day long and doesn't have anything left to give.
mm,
So I
mm,
would rather do one thing at a time a little bit slower and be present with my people than
Mm-hmm.
to ping pong around and be so exhausted that I've got nothing left to give.
Right. So if you want to start doing that more, like you want to, do more one thing at a time and be more with your people, how do you get started there? Because it's sort of that like we're doing it all, but then how do we decide what not to do? And how do we maybe get out of this feeling of feeling selfish or being selfish if we're like, no, this doesn't work for me. I'm too frazzled. My 106 hours is wearing on my system. How can we
Yes.
start?
Yes.
Right.
So, I mean, you've got to take a good look at what is going on and what's going down. What can you outsource?
Mhm,
What is not that important that you be the person doing that thing? There's a
mhm,
bunch on there. I promise. You can look through and find out. You can outsource it to your kids. Is it
mhm.
going to get done fabulously? Probably not, but
Yeah.
it is off your plate and let it go. Drop
You
that
can
rope.
outsource a chat GPT recently. They're like, go to chat GPT and be like, I want a meal plan for 5 days with kids who are picky eaters, and keep the budget at $10 or but like yes.
Yes.
So it
There's
is
so many
looking
resources.
at the
Yes.
outsourcing. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then once you like figure out what you can outsource, figure out where your best energy is spent.
Mm.
What needs me versus what needs to be done. And
Oh,
so you can figure out from that, like, I need my special touch here. No
mhm,
one else can play Uno with my son like I can
mhm,
right now. And
mhm,
so I'm going to be the one to play Uno with him. That's my priority. No
mm,
one else can cook in this house like I can.
mhm,
So that's going to be my priority too.
mhm,
But there's a bazillion other people who can clean the house way better than I can. I'm going to
mhm,
surrender that one. It does not need my touch. So,
mhm,
and you can go through and see what it is that you bring your superpowers to in the day. Focus your energy there. What
mm,
is it that you want to build in your life? Where can you show up best?
mm,
That's where we focus. And your kids, when you feel selfish for doing that, your kids, your family, your people around you do not need a shell of a person that can complete to do lists. They
mhm,
need you.
mhm.
And I
Yeah.
try to remind myself when I'm like, oh my gosh, I should be doing more. There's that sneaky should again. You can
Yeah.
go take a walk
Right.
because I don't need you here.
Mhm,
What I should be doing is exactly what I've decided to do ahead of time. And
mhm.
that's where I'm going to be.
Yeah, I really like that sort of bringing focus to discern between like what needs me versus what needs to be done, and that helps, moms at all stages because again, my mind is sort of on past sessions I've just had today, and I just had one where she was feeling some guilt because her kid is applying to colleges, and that he needs to what needs to be done is the kid needs a little more reinforcement with guidelines and boundaries, and like making sure that he's getting done what he wants to get done because his frontal lobe isn't fully developed. And yet when she does that, it turns into a relationship issue between the two of them, and so it's like, okay, that needs to be done. Can we hire that out? Can we get dad to do it? Is there, and in this case she was like, actually there's a neighbor that he loves doing, and they could
Mm,
do it together. Like, great. But that idea of there's some model, and I'm forgetting what it's called, but like when you look at sort of basically it's your zone of genius, Gay Hendricks model in a square, where it's like what needs to be done, what needs to be done by me, what, and that idea of like, yeah, we might be competent at something, like I can clean a house, but that keeps me away from my zone of genius is just laughing and giggling with my kids when we're like telling jokes, or my zone of genius is playing Uno, or my zone of genius is like cooking. If that is not mine, like I'm not even, that isn't even in my competence square. So that is something my husband does. And at the same time, what comes up here all the time is the mom guilt that I should
mhm.
be, or like what that picture again of what a real mom does. And I think what I'm hearing from you is we need to just throw that friggin' movie out and redo our own movie of what this sort of mom looks like, keeping almost
Yeah.
like those horse blinders on our own path. Like it might work for Melissa to do the cooking, doesn't work for Susie to do the cooking, and that's okay. And it might work for Susie to do the, like, things that I love with my kids. Like I love swimming and goofing around on the beach with them. And someone else is like, oh, heck no, I do better, sitting and reading and studying with them. Or there are so many opportunities when we open our brain up in this way and take the guilt out that we should
Mm.
do it all. Because what you're saying is that actually, when we do it all, it doesn't serve us or them.
No,
Like us
not at
screaming at them to
all.
get their college applications done is like, are you kidding me? What are they gonna remember? Like, that's not helpful for us or them.
Yes. Yes, yes, and there's like we talked about before, there's no one way to parent, but
Yeah.
we've made it this thing in our heads that there is. We have this ideal, and it probably is different for every mom. The ideal mom that she's thinking about is different, and
Yeah.
it has to do with your experience and past and what you think a mom should be. But
Mm,
you've written this unspoken manual for yourself that
mm,
you're never gonna live up to until you take a look at what that is and what it is that you do want, and
mm.
then you can kind of figure out where to move from there.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, that's an exercise, listeners, if you're interested, to just set a 5-minute timer and just really ponder with yourself, like, what is your manual for an ideal mom? Like, what are you thinking I'm a good mom if? And fill that out and then go back and recognize, like you're saying, these are just thoughts that we're thinking. And are those thoughts serving you? Are they helping you? You know, I have to do it all and I have to do the college applications and the cooking and the playing on the beach and the Uno. Like, is that true? You know, and is
Mm.
that helpful? Who'd you be without that
Yes.
thought? Yeah,
Yes.
I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Even if it is true, you can pick a different thought too. Like,
Right,
even if it
exactly.
is true,
Like,
it doesn't matter.
that's why
If
I
it's
guess
not
I like
serving you.
asking myself more, like, is it helpful? Because my brain can be like,
Yes.
yep, it is true. You need to do it all. And then I'm like, well, is it helpful for you to think that?
Yes.
Is it helpful
Even
for
if it is
you?
true, is there a better way to talk about this that does serve the end goal that I want? Even if that is
Yeah.
100% true. I have to tell myself that one all of the time.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Well, you have such a calming nature and supportive and have so much wisdom. So if a listener is like, I want more Melissa, where can I direct them or how do you work with moms?
I work one-on-one coaching moms virtually, so anywhere you are, I am happy to work with you. Just like the conversation we're having today, and we just dive in together and I get a chance to hold a safe space for you to just really explore what's going on, reflect those thoughts back to you that aren't serving you, and we can create a new path forward together. But I've
Mm,
got everything for anybody listening, a special link just for you at momlifebydesign.com/love your life. And you'll have a spot there where you can sign up for a free 30-minute coaching call with me. If you are like, my kids are making me crazy, my to-do list is going to be my undoing, whatever it is, let's hop on a call. We'll work it out together. We'll leave you with an actionable step to move forward.
mm.
And I can hear you already going, you know what? I'm a mom. I do not have time for that. I do not have the energy for that. I don't have the space for that. I don't have a quiet spot for that. Guess what? I don't care. Bring it.
You do.
Bring it. I'm a mom too. Like, it's chaos everywhere. I get it. Just hop
Yeah.
on the call with me and we'll work through it no matter what. And if
Mm,
you're not quite ready for that yet, I've got a link to download some free new thoughts to start practicing today to
mm,
help serve you and get you where you want to go if you're not quite sure what to do. So I'd love to connect with you there. My Instagram is there. That's where I usually hang out, but it's Mom Life by Design. And I'd love to get to say hi to you because we are in this together, mamas. We
mm.
are doing this thing and we're going to do it well because we're
Yeah.
raising a generation that is coming up to be stronger and healthier and more emotionally secure
Mhm.
by taking care of ourselves. And you're
Yes.
doing a great job.
And I just like speaking of those emotions, like feelings, like if the listener who's listening is feeling frustrated or overwhelmed or this, like, am I in burnout? I- Melissa's giving you an offer here that is it's like candy, like 30 minutes talking to her, you have an actionable step. Like, let's sort of push ourselves past that brain that's like, you don't have time, you can't. Like, you absolutely are here to live a life you love. That's the name of this show, that we are here to learn ways to love our lives, to love our kids, to do what we're here to do. And I really appreciate all your offerings, so I will put that in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on today and just spreading your calm and warmth. It just feels very supportive and loving. It's like a mother energy that you're giving to all of us. And so I receive that. I appreciate that. And I'm thankful for your time, Melissa.
I love that so much. Thank you, Susie. I love all that you're doing and all the ways that you're supporting women. You are doing such an excellent job, and I have loved talking with you today.
Thank you. It's like a little love bath. This is so nice.
Yes, it is.